to all of you that Panama wants for the whole world what we want for our own people. That is peace, well-being, justice, and development. Thank you very much.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
on behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Panama for the statement he just made, and I ask Protocol to please escort His Excellency.
l'Assemblée va entendre
The General Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I request Protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor of welcoming His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu,
Président et
President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and I invite him to take the floor.
Mr. President, Head of State and Government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the people of Nigeria, I congratulate you on your well-deserved election as the President of this session of the United Nations General Assembly. We commend your predecessor, His Excellency Shaba Korochi, for his able stewardship of the Assembly also. We also commend His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for his work seeking to forge solutions to humanity's common challenges. This is my first address before the General Assembly. Permit me to say a few words on behalf of Nigeria, my country, on behalf of Africa, my continent, regarding this year's theme. Many proclamations have been made, yet our troubles remain close at hand. Failures in good governance have hindered Africa, but broken promises, unfair treatment, and outright exploitation from abroad have also exerted a heavy toll on our ability to progress. Given this long history, if this year's theme is to mean anything at all, it must mean something special and particular to Africa. In the aftermath of the Second World War, nations gathered in an attempt to rebuild their war-torn societies. A new global system was born. And this great body, the United Nations, was established as a symbol and protector of the aspiration and the finest ideas of humankind. Nations saw that it was in their own interest to help others exceed the rubbles and wasteland of war. Reliable and significant assistance allowed countries emaciated by war to grow into a strong and productive society. The period was a high watermark for trust in global institutions and the belief that humanity had learned the necessary lessons to move forward in global solidarity and harmony. Today, for several decades, Africa has been asking for the same level of political commitment and devotion of resource that described the Marshall Plan. We realize that underlying conditions and causes of economic challenges facing today's Africa are significantly different from those of post-war Europe. We are not asking for identical programs and actions. What we seek is an equal, firm commitment to partnership. We seek enhanced international cooperation with African nations to achieve the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. There are 5 points I want to highlight. First, if this year's theme is to have any importance at all and any impact, global institutions, other nations, and their private sector actors must see Africa as a development priority, not just for Africa, but in the interest of us all as well. Due to both long-standing internal and external factors, Nigeria's and Africa's economic structures have been skewed to impede development, industrial expansion, job creation, and the equitable distribution of wealth. If Nigeria is to fulfill its duty to its people, I know, and the rest of Africa, we must create jobs and the belief in a better future for our people. We are pushing for that. We must also lead by example, and we are doing so, to foster economic growth and investors' confidence in Nigeria, and remove the costly and corrupt fuel subsidy while also discarding a nauseous exchange rate system in my first few days in office. Other growth and job-oriented firms are in the wings. I'm mindful of the transient hardship that reform can cause. However, it is necessary to go through this phase in order to establish a foundation for durable growth and investment to build the economy our people deserve. We welcome partnership with those who not mind seeing Nigeria and Africa assume larger roles in the global community. The question is not whether Nigeria is open for business. The question is how much of the world is truly open to doing business with Nigeria, and how Africa is an equal, mutually beneficial manner. Direct investment in critical industries, opening airports to a wider range and larger quantity of African exports, and meaningful debt relief are important aspects of the cooperation we seek. Second, we must affirm democratic governance as the best guarantor of sovereign will and well-being of the people. Military coups are wrong, as in any titled civilian political arrangement that is, will perpetuate injustice. The wave-crossing part of Africa does not demonstrate favor towards coup. It is a demand for solution to perennial problem. Let us dig it deeper. Regarding Niger, we are negotiating with the military leaders. As chairman of ECOWAS, I seek to help establish democratic governance in a manner that addresses the political economy challenges confronting that nation, including violent extremists who seek to foment instability in our region. I extend a hand of friendship to all of you who may genuinely support this mission for a democratic governance in that nation. This brings me to my third crucial point. Our entire region is locked in protracted battle against violent extremists. In the turmoil, a dark channel of inhuman commerce has formed. Along the route, everything is for sale. Men, women, and children are seen as chattel. Yet, thousands reach the Sahara, hot and sand, and the Mediterranean cold death in search of a better life. At the same time, mercenaries and extremists with their lethal weapons and vile ideologies invade our region from the north. This harmful traffic undermines the peace and stability of the entire region. African nation will improve our economics so that our people do not risk their life to sweep the floors and streets of other nations. We also shall devote ourselves to disbanding extremist groups on our turf. Yet, to fully contain this threat, the international community must strengthen its commitment to arrest the flow of armed and violent people into West Africa. The fourth important aspect of this global trust and solidarity is to secure the continent's mineral-rich areas from plundering and conflicts. Many such areas have become catacombs of misery and exploitation. The Democratic Republic of Congo has suffered this for decades, despite the strong UN presence there. What happened? The world economy owes the Republic of Congo much but gives very little. The mayhem visited on resource-rich areas does not respect national boundaries. Sudan, Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, and the list grow on and on and on. The problem also knocks at Nigeria's door. Foreign entities abated by local criminals who aspire to be petty warlords have drafted thousands of people into servitude to illegally mine gold and other resources. Billions of dollars meant to improve the nation's economy now fuel violent enterprises. If left unchecked, they will threaten peace and place national security at a grave danger. Given the extent of this injustice and the high scales involved, many Africans are asking whether the phenomenon is by accident or by design. Members' nation must reply by working with us to deter their farms and nationals from the 21st century pillage of continent riches. Fifth, climate change severely impacts Nigeria and Africa. Northern Nigeria is honored by desert encroachment, hounded from the north. All are arable lands. Our south is pounded by the rising tide of coastal flooding and erosion. In the middle, the rainy season brings flood that kill and displace multitudes. As I lament death at home, I also lament the grave loss of life in Morocco and Libya. The Nigerian people are with you. Please, note that. African nation will fight climate change, but must do so on fair and just terms. To achieve the needed popular consensus, this campaign must accord with overall economic efforts. In Nigeria, we shall build political consensus by highlighting remedial actions which also promote economic good. Projects such as Green Wall to stop desert encroachment, halting the destruction of our forests by mass production and distribution of gas burning stoves, and providing employment in local water management and irrigation projects are examples of efforts that equally advance both economic and climate change objectives. Continental efforts regarding climate change will register important features if established economies were more forthcoming with public and private sector investment for African preferred initiatives. Again, this will go far in demonstrating that global solidarity is real and working. As I'm about to close, let me emphasize Nigeria's objective accord with the guiding principles of this world body: peace, security, human rights, and development. In fundamental ways, nature has been kind to Africa, given abundant land, resources, and creative and industrious people. Yet, man has too often being unkind to a fellow man, and this sad tendency has brought sustained hardship to Africa's doorstep. To keep faith with the tenets of this world to this body, and the theme of this year's assembly, the poverty of nations must end. The pillage of one nation's resources by overreach of firms and people of stronger nations must end. The will of the people must be respected. This beautiful, generous, and forgiving planet must be protected. As for Africa, we seek to be neither appendage nor patron. We do not wish to replace old shackles with new ones. Instead, we hope to walk the rich African soil and live under the magnificent African sky, free of the wrongs of the past and clear of the associated encumbrances. We desire a beautiful, prosperous, vibrant, democratic living space for our people, where we do it. To the rest of the world, I say, work with us as true friends and partners. Africa is not a problem to be avoided, nor is it to be pitied. Africa is nothing less than the key to the world's future. I thank you for listening.
De l'Assemblée générale, je tiens à remercier.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Nigeria for his statement, and I ask protocol to please escort His Excellency. The Assembly will now hear an address from His Excellency Mr. Luis Lacalle Pou, President of the Eastern Republic of Uruguay. I ask protocol to please escort His Excellency.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honour to welcome His Excellency Mr. Luis Lacalle Pou, President of the Eastern Republic of Uruguay, and to invite him to address the Assembly. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My greetings to the President of the General Assembly, which are also extended to the United Nations Secretary General, to the heads of state and government, to official delegations, and to this organisation that has worked so much to hold this Assembly today. Today, once again, I am here speaking on behalf of my country. I'm here speaking on behalf of my compatriots. We have come here to this forum where more than 190 representatives come to deliver their message from different cultures, different governments, different ideologies, different social situations, different economic, climatic, and geographical situations. However, the fact that all of us are here means that somewhat a long time ago we agreed to work together to achieve the same rights, obligations, and principles. On international law with not much coercive power, where often the same bar is not applied to the larger countries than is applied to smaller ones. We are back here at the Assembly with a positive vision, an optimistic vision of humanity. However, we objectively must say we live in a better world because, of course, nevertheless, we still have challenges to overcome. We are convinced that globalization, ICT, artificial intelligence, real-time communication, all of these things are tools that help for integration and development for our people. Of course, if these tools are used well. We are seeing a growing responsibility of global leaders. Earlier, I heard the United Nations Secretary General emphasize this matter. We are living in a world of a lot of words without actions. We're here, a global leader can bring about consequences with just his words, an international conflict, banking matters, etc., etc. Uruguay has come here to this Assembly with a full, stable democracy, with full respect for institutions and the law, which is an historic tradition in our country. And despite the pandemic, despite the Russian invasion, despite different climatic factors, our country's economy has recovered to what it was before the pandemic. Employment has improved, unemployment has decreased, we have historic public investment in infrastructure, and significant direct foreign investment has been received, and a lot has been invested in our country, which shows the significant amount of trust. Our public finances are in good order. Inflation is at an 18-year low, taxes have been able to be decreased, and at the same time we have undertaken reforms that had been urgent for a long time, such as educational reform and reform to social security. The Uruguayan people have a responsible sense of freedom. Today, when I was writing some of my speech, I remembered what I said here in September 2021. The end of my speech said that the pandemic had reminded us that all of us were one, and for this reason, we are all one. And so, based on that, I wish to refer to the responsible freedom, international responsible freedom, liberty. It is clear that our well-being as countries, our independent countries, is intrinsically linked to the common good. We need to be aware of this, accept it, and act as a result. Since early on, a lot of heads of state here have referred to the environment. I belong to a country that was classified and given the name Natural Uruguay. a few years ago. Renewable energies in our country represent more than 90%. We have significant reforestation. We have sustainable production processes. And I could continue with a long list that underpins this concept of natural Uruguay. After many years of statements and commitments made, the international community really understood that the economy and the environment were intrinsically linked to one another. Uruguay, a few months ago, issued a sustainable bond that is based on prizes and punishments, penalties, depending on the level of compliance with the Paris Agreement. And here, I wish to draw your attention to the fact that we are convinced. We understand that the system of benefits and penalties should be applied to international loans, for example, market access, quotas, and tariffs. It is not just our vocation to punish lack of compliance, but rather to reward those who engage in processes that are environmentally friendly and that are sustainable. In this way, just like it is when we are children, there are incentives to improve. And this would mean that nations would make more efforts in their domestic economies and also globally. In this same vein, I wish to share a situation that my country is going through with you, and I'm sure your nations are probably going through the same thing. I think we can call this the sin of doing things well. And what am I talking about when I talk about this sin of doing things well? Well, my country has achieved a level of significant human and economic development. And thanks to reaching these standards, often we do not benefit from systems of cooperation, from preferences, for example, instruments for international trade support. And of course, I would be remiss not to share the spirit with which these mechanisms were created, but I do think that we need to take a fresh look at them, because often countries grow and then they lose access to these conditions. I wish to make it clear that Uruguay is not coming here to beg or make exaggerated claims. However, simply what I was referring to, responsible international liberty, I think that it's necessary to act with justice. If we do things well, we should act as a consequence of this, and this means nothing less and nothing more than improving access to opportunities. Just to wrap up, because I know you've had a long day, I wish once again, here at this forum, like others have done, to firmly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine and express our solidarity to the Ukrainian people. Further, I wish to agree with the Secretary-General, the United Nations Secretary-General, and raise our voice against authoritarian populism that are bringing impoverishment to their peoples, violating human rights, and condemning current and future generations. Once again, perhaps here we should engage in a mea culpa, because often the absence of a robust and effective reaction from the international community has led to us not avoiding these types of situations. Thank you very much.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Uruguay, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Petr Pavel, President of Czechia. I ask protocol to escort His Excellency.
au nom de l'Assemblée générale, j'ai l'honneur de souhaiter.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Petr Pavel, President of the Czech Republic, and I invite him to address the Assembly.
Monsieur le Président, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and a humbling experience to address this distinguished audience for the first time. This forum carries a great responsibility for the shape of humanity's future. First and foremost, I see my address as an opportunity to present a view of how we can coexist and cooperate as nations and global citizens. Czechia aims to play a proactive role and responsible role within the global community. No one can cope with the current global challenges alone. That is why we strongly support the reform proposed by the UN Secretary General in our common agenda. We want to work together on a more effective and inclusive multilateral system that is able to address the needs that we face. This is why Czechia announced its candidacy for non-permanent membership of the Security Council for the term 2032-33. Last year, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, one of the founding nations of this organization, blatantly violated the fundamental principles the UN stands upon. The Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine continues to constitute a manifest violation of the UN Charter and international law we all subscribe to. My country has its own experience with wars and interventions, including decades-long military occupation imposed by Moscow. It taught us what it means when might makes right. Russia's aggression against Ukraine has come at an even higher cost. I personally visited Ukraine in April this year. My wife had this opportunity to visit a war-torn country only 2 weeks ago. I saw the infamous crime scenes of Bucha and Borodyanka. I found myself in Dnipro region, only a few miles away from the front line, in the area ravaged by war fighting. The account of Russia's atrocities, human rights violations, and ferocious attacks against the innocent civilian population is overwhelming. Children forcibly separated from their families, deported for re-education in order to make them forget their culture and who they are. Entire towns and villages wiped out for no reason. Mass graves and torture chambers in which people just disappear. Sadly, the evidence tells the story better than any statement. The list of stories full of horror is endless. Yet we cannot just passively observe it. This must end. Russia must unconditionally withdraw all troops from the entire territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Russia's leaders must be held accountable for the crime of aggression against its neighbor. This is why we have extended our support to the establishment of a special tribunal to prosecute the crime of aggression against Ukraine. It is our duty to ensure that those responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity are held accountable. Apart from violence, injustice, and suffering of civilians, every war also brings destruction. Reconstruction of Ukraine may be the largest rebuilding effort in modern history. We support establishing the register of damage caused by Russian military, and we call on all states to join these efforts. Czechia will support Ukraine in its defense as long as necessary. From day one, we have stood by Ukraine's side and provided the defenders with weapons and ammunition. With the outburst of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, Czechia has also stepped up its support for Russian and Belarusian pro-democratic voices, and Prague has become an important hub for journalists and human rights defenders in need. For over 18 months, Czechia has been providing humanitarian assistance to the war-affected Ukrainian population. Per capita, my country has received more Ukrainian refugees than anybody else, mostly women and children. What Ukrainian people truly deserve is peace. Not just any end of hostilities, but just and durable peace. If it is to be sustainable, it cannot be based on an unjust compromise or conditions imposed by the conqueror. Neither shall it leave hopes for Russia to fulfill its imperial ambitions. It must be peace on terms of the defender and not the aggressor, as earlier today stated President of Ukraine, Zelensky. Don't forget, the damaging impacts of Russia's aggression are felt across the world. Russia's blockade of Ukrainian ports and destruction of infrastructure and grain continues to weaponize global food security in the most reckless and cynical way. Let me be very clear. Ukraine's security is our own security, from Africa to Europe to Latin America to Asia. I call on leaders of the free world to keep the unity and support of Ukraine. Mr. President, the threats we face are global and interconnected. Because of Russia and a handful of other countries, our world is more dangerous and rougher. Instead of cultivating cooperative security, we have to build up our militaries. Instead of boosting social cohesion programs and overcoming economic insecurity, we have to boost our defense budgets. Those who contest the international rules steer the wheel of global security backwards into confrontation, and sooner or later at the expense of all of us. Russia's reckless threats to use nuclear weapons, its policy of coercion and intimidation, represent a threat to balance and integrity of the whole system of non-proliferation. The announced stationing of nuclear weapons in Belarus is a further irresponsible escalation Czechia condemns in the strongest terms. Unfortunately, Russia's fingerprints can be found in several other current crises. Mr. President, the security, humanitarian and political crises unfolding in Sahel region are more than worrisome. The international community must try to find a way to end the series of military coups and ensure a return to constitutional order. This is the only way countries can effectively protect themselves against terrorism. It is the only way the much-needed economic and social development called for by African people can take place. The region remains vulnerable to numerous political, economic, and climate risks. Its long-term stability, security, and prosperity is crucial. We must offer genuine, pragmatic partnerships. Some countries pretend to be willing to help. In reality, they create economic and political dependencies. These undermine the long-term stability and manipulate the free will of people by spreading lies and disinformation. In Asia and Pacific, Czechia is an active and reliable ally and partner. The word cooperation must remain key for our joint efforts in the region. We deplore China's military actions which raise tensions in the Taiwan Strait and its unfriendly actions against partners in the South China Sea. Any dispute or contentious issue must be solved peacefully. Any potential armed conflict in the region would have negative consequences for the whole world. In North Korea and Iran, reckless escalation of nuclear or intercontinental ballistic missile activities combined with lack of transparency threaten international and regional security. The same applies to any material support to Russia's military aggression in Ukraine. It is clear that such supplies only aggravate the suffering of the Ukrainian civilian population. The Middle East remains the world's most volatile region, troubled by spread of conflicts, terrorism, and sectarian violence. Efforts to normalize the relations between Israel and its Arab neighbors bring positive steps towards stability and peace in the region. Mr. President, our efforts to maintain peace and security are closely linked with our ability to promote human well-being and sustainable development of our societies. One may ask how a country of 10+ million people can contribute to global ambitions. Having our own national experience with oppression, fundamental rights and freedoms are deeply embedded in our value system and foreign policy. Czechia strives to pursue an active human rights and democracy policy. We are a strong supporter of international human rights mechanisms. Currently, we are proud to serve